I'm Garrison Doctor,
And I'm Corinne Doctor.
and this is Fishing Stories.
And welcome to the finale of Season 2, Fishing Stories.
That's right. Today we talk with one of our favorite people, Tom Bie, editor of, I would say, the best fishing magazine out there, the Drake Mag, our favorite at least.
For sure. We talk a lot about the magazine and what it means to us in the episode. And then Tom followed the unofficial theme of this season of taking us down a few stories where things went wrong.
That's right. Always an entertaining story when things don't go according to plan.
And I swear that we did not ask our guests this season to tell us these stories. It just kind of happened.
That's the way it goes.
And it's fine. It's good. Keeps us all a little more humble.
That's right. Absolutely right. And as Corinne mentioned, this is the season 2 finale. We'll be back in 2021 with another season or two. In the meantime, if you have any comments, we would love to hear from you. Shoot us an email.
You could send questions, comments, feedback, your own fishing story. Our email address is tellusafishingstory@gmail.com.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Love to hear a fishing story. So shoot us a note, enjoy the episode, and thank you so much for listening.
And we will see you in 2021. Hey, Tom.
Hey, Corinne, how are you?
Good.
Good. Nice to see you guys.
I know. It's good to see you.
Yeah, great to see your face even on a screen.
Yep. Usually it's been at sporting events of late or not on the river enough, but we'll get there.
We did have a run-in up north in a small town not that long ago that was pretty exciting. Little impromptu.
Good old Pinedale.
There you go.
We're driving down the main road and we go, wow, that person has Drake stickers and beaver stickers. That has to be
That's
Tom.
Tom for sure. It's got
There's not two of those vehicles out there.
Oh,
No way.
no.
Get the passions just displayed on the back windshield.
Right. No, I love Pinedale though. That whole part of Wyoming is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you would know. I know you've spent quite a significant part of your life up in the Jackson area.
I have. I was up there for 8 years and did guide the green on occasionally, but it would be early in the season when the snake was too high and not fishable yet. But it was a haul down to Warren Bridge from Jackson. So that was a pretty short part of it.
I know the scene. We're up there quite a bit, and I have to catch myself because I find myself getting a little bit territorial about the Jackson boys coming down and guiding. I'm like, hey, man,
And
get
then
out.
we're
And
like,
then I'm like,
We have
You have
No,
Colorado plates on.
I did come up here from Colorado. Not a whole lot to stand on, I guess.
Yeah. At least it's not Utah. I think they have a worse problem with some of the Salt Lake crowd of late. Because
Right.
there's a lot, especially on the guiding side, right? Not necessarily Pinedale, but some of those other parts of the green, et cetera.
Well, everything's crowded now. Everybody's discovering fishing.
Yes,
Since
they
they
are.
can't do their indoor or sporting activities, so everybody's outside, which
Yep.
I love the outdoors. I'm glad more people know about it, but it's also a struggle.
That's right.
Yeah, it's been one of the silver linings, from a business side. We just happen to have an industry that does well with social distancing, and
That's right.
none of us really knew that, right? I mean, it's kind of the luck of the draw, but there is certainly a lot of new people fly fishing over the past 3 months, 4 months.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hopefully they're having fun.
Right, exactly.
Exactly.
Well, tell the people really quick who don't know you, just a very brief kind of who you are. Give us a little bio, set the stage for us.
Well, I mentioned I guided up in Jackson. I'm originally from Oregon, though. Like you guys out there, I spent some time in Portland. In the late 90s in Jackson, I started the Drake magazine. And that's the magazine has been my business for the past 20 years. But I was also an editor for skiing magazines and things like that. So I've bounced around several ski towns and ended up here in Denver in 2012, and I've been here ever since.
Love it. And just a quick fanboy moment. I have always loved the Drake. I started fly fishing when I was really young, but I didn't have like a mentor or any type of like industry contact or even a family member who fly fished. So I was just like working out of like an outdated, how-to book. And it took me a minute to like, nose around a fly shop a bit more. And, well, I've been a fan for a long time.
The Drake
I
became your
appreciate it.
aspirational.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that. I think you can learn some things about how to fly fish from the Drake, but it's much more about the cultural side of it. And we try to be lighthearted about things, and a lot more about maybe why you might want to go fly fishing instead of, the gear so much or the wear, even though we have had a lot of destination pieces over the year. There's much more to those stories generally than just a go here and do this. And I've been very, very lucky to be able to go and travel to a lot of these places. It's incredibly fortunate on my part to be able to go to these places that I never otherwise would be able to afford.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, obviously the how and the gear and all of that has its place, but I do think of the Drake as more of like the soul piece of fly fishing.
No, I appreciate it.
The storytelling, obviously we love stories. That's one of the reasons we're here today. And like you said, that community and
Right.
more of the why. So
yeah, definitely. And like early in my fly fishing career, like I had a lot of family that just didn't really understand. It's like, why are you spending so much time doing this? Like, what is your deal? Like, obsessed with this? Like, I don't get it. And so just to read like well-written stories of some of the reasons why fly fishing is important to various people and the places that it can take you, I think was definitely inspirational to me. Like gave some credence to like, this maybe is like a pastime and a sport and a hobby, but also can be more important than that.
it keeps us sane.
Right.
Right. Well, yeah, you weren't alone there. My own parents just were baffled by the sport of fly fishing.
My dad still doesn't get it.
Dad too. My dad was not only not a fly fisherman, he wasn't even a sport fisherman. I mean, like a lot of commercial fishermen, which is what he was early in his life. He didn't get the fishing for fun thing at all.
Yeah, it was a job.
Right.
Yeah.
My dad doesn't have any sort of fisherman by his name. There's no.
But his dad is an incredibly skilled artist, which obviously plays into the.
That was also passed down.
Yeah.
Like, that's great. Now, well, I think the content of the magazine too, didn't really know it necessarily at the time in the late 90s, but it has obviously played an effect on the Drake still being around and being successful, that you just can't Google up the sort of essays and things like that it's just much easier to find some of the how-to stuff online, right? So it's made those sort of publications struggle more in the past decade or so, especially.
That makes sense.
Well, on the storytelling side, let's not discount your role in bringing the film tour to the people.
Yes, that was something that was very much influenced by, I was in the ski industry at the time, and that was a huge part. I mean, obviously Warren Miller for 5 decades had been going on, but then I was in Jackson when the TGR guys started their scene up there, and that was mid 90s, and went to those premieres in Jackson, and it was just so exciting. And when I first started talking about making a fly fishing movie or doing some of those sorts of things, again, my friends that are just like, you're kidding, right? Yeah, I'm gonna start one too. And
crazy ideas work sometimes,
Yeah, but it worked. It was incredibly exciting, and we had good filmmakers come in, and it's just gotten a little bit better every year. And it turns out there is really much more broad topics in fly fishing than there were in almost any other sport that had ever done it, in terms of location and times of year and species and bugs and fish, and it just it lends itself a lot to great storytelling.
Yes, It's awesome. Well, that is one thing that I'm going to really miss that would have been happening in like, what, 2 weeks from right now?
Yes.
We would be at the IFTD show and thus the Drake Film Awards, which is arguably the greatest party of the year.
14 years, it's gone straight. But, and we talked about doing something virtually like the Fly Fishing Film Tour did, and I think they did a good job with it, but it's just so much about the party for me and filmmakers and stuff like that. And
well, I rarely pay attention to anything other than the social aspect, if I'm being totally honest.
Right. No, and you're not alone. I mean, people are there to hang out with each other. We always have good beer, and it's a good party, and it's a highlights reel anyway. So you're not seeing the whole film. So I just think until we can get together and have that sort of experience again, I was going to hold off on doing it. Plus, it's just an industry event anyway. It's open to the public, but it was largely an industry event. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we'll miss seeing you there and the hype and the beer, of course.
Of course. We can still get the beer. Thank you.
Yeah, right. That's true.
Right. Well, speaking of stories, you mentioned doing a little bit of traveling in your day, and I know you have more than a couple stories under your belt. We'd love to hear one.
Okay. Well, I have been really lucky to do many, many trips, but one of my earliest ones, and with both people have ended up being two of my better friends in the industry, and this was Travis Rummel, who is one of the owners of Felt Soul Media and made a lot of those great films and has still done a lot of work with Yeti, and David Mangum, who at the time was guiding in Florida for the Tarpon, but has also spent a lot of time in New Orleans, the south of New Orleans, and doing the red fishing thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think David and Travis had even met, but Travis and I were coming down there. And I think I'd only fished with David maybe once before, but we were fishing for redfish out of Hopedale. This was mid-October, I think was the time of year. And we wanted to go for big fish. That was David's plan, and still kind of
full red season.
Yeah.
Exactly. But we headed out, and we went a long ways. I'm not sure exactly how far, but a good distance out of Hopedale, 20 miles probably. And David lost his lower unit in the boat. And it's 8:30, 9 a.m. And we're a long ways away. But he was still a guide. He was pulling us around, and we got some decent redfish, and we just talked about what was going to have to happen, and somebody was going to have to come out and get us. And so he occasionally throughout the morning kind of, who can I call? But there's, like all guides, there's a bit of ego there, and maybe there's certain people he didn't want to call, right? He was kind of new to guiding down there. Yeah. And he wasn't going to call Greg Arnold, who he had just recently met. I don't know. You two have fished down in New Orleans, right? Or have you been?
Never.
You haven't been down there. Okay.
No.
Well,
it's on the list.
I mean, there's a reason that average Joes don't just go down there and throw their boat in. I mean, you get lost in 5 minutes leaving out of those marinas. So, but we were a long ways out, and most of the people that he was going to call, I mean, this is 10 years ago at least, probably 12, and the people he was going to call were out guiding, so he couldn't get a hold of them, couldn't reach them. He was good friends with the Holman brothers. We knew that they were there, and Travis and Bear, they had a big lake and bay, which could have probably gotten to us in a half an hour or so, but they were somewhere else. And David had a business partner that he'd recently broken up with. Had you guys seen the book that he put out with Yeti?
Yes.
Okay, he writes about this story in the intro.
Oh, excellent.
It was a partner he had. He calls in there. His name was right, and he guides for redfish and things down, but him were partners, and they had recently broken up. That was the last guy that he was going to call.
Right.
It was not a great breakup. I mean, Monty Burke's new book, he also tells the story
Oh God.
They had a very physical encounter at the end of their business relationship.
Oh dear.
And this was right at that time. I mean, it was either just before or just after, and I mean within like weeks or so of this ending. I might not have it exactly right, but it was recent breakup with him. So that's certainly the guy who wasn't going to call. Well, now it's getting dark. I mean, and there's a storm coming. We've been out there for 12 hours and his phone is dead. Travis Rummel has the only phone that works, and we can see the lights of New Orleans, but you guys haven't been down there, but you got to understand, you're out there in the middle of the marsh. You could die of starvation looking at the city of New Orleans. I mean, places there that people wouldn't find you at all.
Yes.
And so now it's getting dark. There's less and less traffic, and he decides he's going to call his guide. Preston Sutter was his name, and he's driving over from Florida to New Orleans. So he gets a hold of him, and it's 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night. We've been out there forever. And Preston shows up at the boat ramp there in Fairhope and the little marina. And the guy in there asks him, do you know where you're going? Because Preston had told him where we were. And the guy said, how long have you been guiding down there? Well, Preston had been there for a year. And in this marina, there's a big wall map behind it that has the marsh or where people are going fishing. And this old guy, the kind of guy you'd picture, Louisiana dude, is down there, and he tells Preston, you ain't going here. You ain't going here. You're going here. This was a long ways away. And Preston got, he's really, really nervous, but, as far as we knew, he'd be able to make it out there. He'd be able to. So we're waiting this whole time. We ended up firing some flares off, trying to get, of course, they went about 10 feet, fell in the water,
Great.
Not the dramatic effect you're looking for.
No, we're just like, are we going to end up being out here all night? And finally, we see a boat coming, but it drove past us, a couple times and back and forth, but we're like, that must be Preston. He's getting closer and closer. So finally, the boat pulls up. It's dark, it's raining, but finally the boat's there, but it's not Preston.
Oh
no.
no.
It's David's partner. He had seen Preston at the dock, and Preston got too scared, and so had to come out. And the first word, and you should have seen the look on David's face. He didn't know what to say, right? The first words out of his mouth were, you're going to have to leave your boat out here. We thought we were getting towed in.
No.
But had somebody else with him. So suddenly there was 5 of us in this tiny little boat. Mangum has to leave his boat there because his ex-partner, who they really are ready to kill each other already at this point, is now saving us. The last person who wants to save us. So Mangum has to leave his boat, and we take the boat ride in. That is one of the top 3 scariest things I've ever done in my life. It's pitch dark, and we're screaming in this boat. And you can't see, we have a light in the back of the boat, and you can't see the front of the skiff. And we're going like 50. And anybody that's ever been down there knows that is a scary, scary route back in daytime. I mean, there's rebar all over. There's, you're crossing a massive shipping lane in the dark. And then you get to a narrow, windy route back to the dock. And by the time it had been raining so hard that then by the time we got in there was floating logs and things to avoid, but did it. He got us back.
That is wild.
David just had to bite his tongue the whole way. But Travis and we stopped about halfway back and just looked at each other. And he's like, I've never felt so unsafe in my life. I mean, going 50 in pitch dark and there's things just zooming past you. But he got us back. And then the next morning, David had to go out and retrieve his boat. So that was the first experience with myself and Travis and David Mangum.
Oh,
but we can see some of these other stories with David talking about that's not in those stories, but he had to come out and rescue us one time.
Oh God.
That's so good. It is amazing how some of these guys can navigate these places at night. We had an experience last year
I was thinking of
where
that
we were
too.
fishing this canal system in Florida, and we
Right.
put in just like off of our buddy's house and right into this canal. It was
We're
great.
just fishing dock lights, so it needs to be dark when you go.
Yeah, so we're fishing
Yeah.
dock lights, and it was really fun. We had a great, but it's like 2:33 a.m. and we're like, okay, we're gonna fish tomorrow. We probably should get a little bit of sleep here, right?
Right.
And what we didn't realize was like we thought we were just gonna put the boat back right where we had jumped into the boat, which is like
Sure.
across the street from his house. But no, we had to like rip through this tiny little S curve system to get to this boat ramp way over there
Where
to
his
get the
truck was.
to get the boat out, because we were putting in at a different place in the morning, of course.
Right.
And it was pitch black and just ripping through this.
And I'm
It's
like,
amazing how much.
we're gonna hit an island.
I'm like,
And
I
it's
don't,
like-
I mean, obviously you can pretty much do it blindfolded if you can do that at night.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they know it that well and are out there running it. I mean, when I was guiding the Upper Snake as a rafting guide, I could have gone out there at night and run that thing almost with my eyes closed, right?
Yeah,
Right.
you
That's
knew
a
where to
river.
cut right.
It's
cut
only one route for the most
Yeah.
part. It just seems, how well these guys, but even the guys that know it that well can't always get you back. And I'll
Not
get to
with a
that.
storm like that
little
too.
while.
Whoa.
I know the store back. I mean, they had there's GPS was on, and was driving, and he had brought a friend with him who was wiping down the GPS as we're driving, and also zooming in and then zooming back out again constantly, just to see, where are we in the big picture map, and then let's not hit that bank over there. I mean,
He
that's
was the rally
I
car
was
driver.
gonna say it's the skip version of a rally car race. They have the co-pilot that's like
Yeah.
turn Titans 30 left, and they're like
Right.
shouting commands at the driver. Like that's what you need.
It was
Not
so
for me.
frightening. I remember turning into the final route to get back, and a pelican flew out and whoo, just like it didn't hit us, but it was like a couple feet away, right? I mean,
And that
just
would have hurt.
yes, it would have hurt really pretty badly.
Oh,
But
jeez.
it's not.
Well, we're glad you survived all of that. Did you guys catch any fish?
We did. We did.
right.
Like you said, got to hand it to Dave. He kept on guiding. Like we were already out there, and he could certainly pull us around. There was nothing there was no need to go back just then. Ended up taking longer than maybe we thought it would.
Yeah, a little bit.
But no, we got we got fish, and they were good fish. It was great.
I mean, when you've got flies and rods
Right.
and at least a push pull,
There you
Yeah.
go.
might as
Yeah. We had no problem going around the day. We just happened to be 20 miles from home.
oh, jeez.
And
Well, we have had, we ripped around in the dark, but that I was like, if I trust anyone to do this, it's you, to our guide. But
right.
we got almost stranded the very first time we went saltwater fishing. The motor mount broke, and so
Yeah,
he
we were
had
off
to,
the Texas coast red fishing, and we ran like
Like,
way
through
into
this
this
bay
wildlife refuge and like way out,
Right.
and the motor mount broke.
Yeah, so he had to like jerry rig some situation with ropes and like hold the motor on somehow.
Oh, really?
And I think we idled
Where in Florida were you?
out of Aransas.
Yeah, Port Aransas,
Oh,
Rockport.
in Texas. I'm sorry. Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
Texas.
All right.
Yeah, so we ran into the wildlife refuge like way in there, and then he like went to like pop us to a new spot and broke the motor mount.
Oh my God.
So we had to idle the entire way back, and it was not short.
Right. Okay. Well, so you're idling. Do either of you know Tim Borski, that name?
I know the name
That
for
name
sure. I've
sounds-
never
He's
met
an
him.
incredible artist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great artist.
And fly tire. And he has several little small saltwater flies in particular that he's known for, but also just an incredible artist. And
Right.
he's a Keys guy, but not all the way down, like halfway down. But he was never a guide, just a artist and really, really smart, interesting guy. Got a couple little kids down there, but I went down there to do a story with him. That in itself was really great. We went out at night in the Everglades looking for the Burmese pythons, because he's
Ooh.
he was the only non-government person that had received a permit to go in there and actually hunt him. Florida, being Florida, of course, a few years later opened up and had a hunting weekend for anyone that could come in.
Well, with bounties on their heads.
Yes.
Yeah.
And talk to any of these guys, and they're like, we're going to clear them out. They got like 3 out of
Yeah.
there's like
not doing
200
a
guys
lot
in
of swamp to comb through for a
and they did not. No, that didn't work. But a story that Tim told me, which reminded me of this, was a guy down there that was not particularly popular because he was kind of a dick. I won't say his name because I can't remember his name. But Tim was out there, and this is a guy who was always kind of loud about people getting a little too close to him, whatever, and he would give you like, one of these sort of arms in the air, like, what are you doing?
So a classic Keys guide.
Yeah, it's goodness.
Classic Keys guy. Again, not Key West guy. This is up a ways, but on the backcountry side, fishing redfish or snook or something. But Tim is back there, and he's motoring along, and he sees this guy, and like most people that are familiar with this guide, he kind of just put his head down, didn't want to, and he looked up and saw him giving him like this, like arms up. He's like, God, I didn't even get close to you. Why are you mad at me? And Tim just kind of kept on motoring, and he gets home, and the next morning he gets a call, and his wife answers his phone and says, hey, it's this guy. And he's like, oh my God, what did I do now? I didn't even go close to him. And he said, why didn't you come help me last night?
Oh no.
Oh no.
His motor was done, and he got all the way back to the marina by taking his anchor and throwing it out there and pulling himself up to his anchor and throwing it again. It took him 7 hours to get back.
That's a long night.
and Tim's like, well, I mean, maybe that's the price you pay for people just not wanting to get close to you and get yelled at or whatever.
It's a boy who cried wolf situation.
Totally, right?
Watch your arm gestures.
Oh.
He's like, oh, I didn't know.
Oh no.
Oh dear.
Oh, yeah. Haven't you guys been? Did you go down to was it the Secure at Samane?
Oh yeah.
You went down there.
Yeah.
So you heard John Sherman and when we were down there.
Yes.
What happened?
We talked about that. Well, we tried to buy you some beers, but then you bought our beers for some odd reason to talk about, the trip and the do's and the don'ts.
That's right. Yes.
That's out of control. I think we should share with the people.
Well, yes, the flood itself. I mean, it's a fantastic trip, and you guys would probably agree. Fishing for those Dorado, one of the greatest things you could fish for, and it's Marcelo Perez and their company down there, Samane, I guess.
Right.
Samane is the park where you fish, and people will have heard a lot about this because Marcelo was a guest like 3 episodes prior to you.
So we talk a lot about Dorado with Marcelo. So we'll have some background here.
But your particular story didn't make the cut.
It did not.
It did not. Well, so John Sherman and I flew in there, and we did our hike up, which took a couple days, and then went up into the canyon, which people have seen more now. A few people have made little films about that section of the river. But
yeah, you guys definitely went further than the average. Even when you do a camp with them now, you guys definitely went further.
That's what Marcelo was saying. It was a healthy hike up there. It was a good 10 or 12 miles. And then into the canyon, and then up to as far as it goes, where there's a waterfall and you have the big pool and there's Paku in there. And it was just a incredible fishing, and everything about it was fantastic. But on the way out, so we came out of the canyon. This was our last night that we were in there. And John and I had discussed getting up early and going back up into the canyon just for a couple hours before breakfast, but it was really raining hard. And throughout the night, John and I woke up several times and said something to each other, like, are you hearing this? Like, are you nervous? And I grew up in Oregon. Yeah, I know heavy rain, but this is absurdly heavy rain. And for hours, and just thinking about the landscape that we had spent the past 2 days in, a super narrow, steep canyon surrounded by an enormous bowl of jungle.
Right.
It just added up to not a good situation. So we were nervous, but falling asleep, waking up, and then pretty soon it was daylight and there was no high water. And so we just thought, maybe it can just absorb more or whatever. And then an hour later, middle of breakfast, and you could hear it coming. And it was loud and terrifying. I mean, we were just 100 yards down from where the canyon opens up. And so this was being pushed down that narrow canyon and then to the end. And once it got out of the canyon, it wasn't like a flash flood necessarily. It was coming up a little slower because the valley widened right there, but still enough that you're scrambling and grabbing all your stuff and not knowing how high it's going to get. And so tents and tables and everything was just dug as high as it could get. And then it wasn't like canyon walls. We could have scrambled up into the jungle and gotten higher, but it just kind of filled that area. Yeah. But it probably went from 300 CFS to between 20 and 30,000. Enormous water. And it was, all I had in my head was, what if this had happened in the middle of the night?
Right.
Like and Marcelo, to his credit, like at the time he kind of played it down, like, oh, this doesn't happen at night or something like that. And I was like, shut up, Marcelo, that doesn't. They could have easily happened in the middle of the night. And they lost lodges down there, complete lodges that were built way up.
Although that was in the rainy season. That was when it was
not. That was, but the point is, they thought that lodge was safe and they had to replace it twice. Right. 2 times they've had to do it, So it happens. But I was really worried about the coming down after that. But that ended up being way easier. I mean, the water was so high that it just kind of flooded all of those, what would have been falls and things like that at the time. But John actually was ready enough that he turned on his little GoPro there and got the whole thing over the course of between 10 and 12 minutes filling up. And it looks like a time lapse, but it's not. That's how fast it happened. Wow. So we did lose some things, but we weren't overly prepared. Now, and I've done a couple trips with Marcelo since. We actually went down to Cuba last year, just before Christmas, and he had a great a new operation down there, which is kind of nice.
We have seen photos of that, and as you know, we're bird watchers too, and just being in that,
I know you guys are bird
that refuge just looks incredible.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that situation is so wild. I mean, just like for people who maybe didn't listen to Marcelo one or need a refresher, like where you are when that water is coming up is like, okay, so you're a few miles from the lodge for sure.
Yeah, it was a 3-day walk. It was 12 miles on these little tiny
from the lodge being like a plane flight like you are in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
When that water's coming up.
Yeah, you can't be, and it's not like you're calling someone. Even if you had the equipment to call someone, nobody's coming to the middle of the Amazon jungle to
that river is so incredible. I think you can, when it's really low and clear, you can tell that it pushes an absolutely extraordinary amount of water in the rainy season every year, just from the structure and the rocks, right. And those runs that even when the water is really low are so deep. I mean, they've been scoured out, and you can just tell like, this is kind of trout stream-esque in a way, right? You got like riffles and runs and pools, but it's on steroids.
And massive boulders that have been
massive boulders.
Yeah. Jungle.
Yeah.
It's funny because Marcelo, our first lunch hiking up there. So we'd been on the river just a couple hours, and we stop and have lunch. And I was asking Marcelo, or talking to him, of course, I'm going to write a story about this. And he makes some comment about how all the travel writers that come to Brazil or Bolivia, we were in Bolivia, says how dangerous the jungle is. And it's just not that dangerous. So yeah, he's talking about how not dangerous it is there. And then we're having lunch, and I look down, and there's butterflies all over, and this was that's a popular butterfly, and I have a little caterpillar crawling down my leg, and I go to grab it. Oh, look at this cute little. I mean, this is 2 minutes after he finished telling us how safe. And
you don't touch anything in the jungle, man.
One of his guides looks at me and says, that, I wouldn't do that. And he comes over with a stick or a rock or something and moves this little critter off of my leg. And only later do I read about these things that drill down with their little claws into your leg. But then that opens up the discussion about bullet ants and all the other things. And he's so great at playing this stuff down. There are real dangers down there. And overall, of course, it is incredibly safe, but
it is.
The jungle has plenty of things that can kill you.
It does. But I think, when you stick to the river corridor like that, and we talked about this a little bit in the podcast, as bird watchers, we've done a lot of hiking
middle of the jungle
through the middle of the jungle on trails and getting up to canopy towers and stuff. And that opens up a lot of stuff that and bugginess too, that don't experience on that river corridor. It's actually just such a nice way to travel through the jungle for the most part,
Although I will say, we were day one full day fishing. Sure. We get on our boat, and there's a giant spider crawling towards Garrison, and I'm not really scared of bugs, honestly.
But Amazon-sized spider.
Yeah, huge. I mean, probably 4 inches in diameter, crawling along the canoe.
Right.
It's kind of coming towards Garrison, and I indicate at it, and the guide in the back just uses his push pull and kind of scoots it off. And our guide asks him in Spanish, "Does that one bite?" And he answers, "Oh yeah, of course." As
the spider runs away on the water, it's totally comfortable just running on the
Jesus
river.
Spider.
And I was like, oh, I don't love that at all.
Right. The thing looks kind of like a superpower.
Right.
Yeah. We say all this, and we're going back to the jungle to the exact same spot.
Oh, for sure.
Oh my God. Oh yeah, I'd go back there in a second.
On that note,
we'll live to tell another tale, I think.
Nice chatting with you guys.
I know, it's so fun to catch up with you. Let's give just a couple plugs here at the end so people can, subscribe, where they can subscribe. Maybe they can follow you on Instagram.
Yeah, if they don't buy the Drake at their local fly shop or subscribe to the Drake, they should. Just say
Thank you guys very much. Yes, drakemag.com is the address, but still over 300 fly shops that carry it. So try your local fly shop first. Love to send you in there to support them and buy a mag, and just appreciate all the readers that I have had over the years. Some have been there since the very beginning. So really appreciate it. And thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you for joining us for a virtual cocktail, and we'll let you get to your next passion, which is basketball.
Coming right up. Yes. Thank you so much, both of you.
Yeah,
hey,
thanks, Tom.
Great to chat. We'll catch up soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Fishing Stories is brought to you by RepYourWater and Locke & Co. Whiskey. Thank you to all of our past guests of the last 2 seasons. As we mentioned, this is our season 2 finale, and we'll be back in 2021 with more guests, more stories. And in the meantime, be sure to go and subscribe if you haven't already, so you don't miss that season 3 coming at you in 2021. And if you have comments, questions, thoughts, feedback, fishing story of your own, shoot us an email at tellusafishingstory@gmail.com. Thanks again.